necessities. Simple bare necessities. Reminder to self. Edit that part out of this video. Hello. Merry Christmas. Now, either my videos have gotten worse, which I hope the hell they haven't, or everybody's broke. I usually get a few donations around Christmas. This time I've only gotten two. I've only gotten two in the past week and a half. Like wow, I know everybody's broke. It must be bad. I know I am. I'll edit that out of this video too. Quantitative and qualitative, really key important discussion. I have a debate that perpetually reoccurs. It's not really a debate, it's a discussion. I used to have the debate ages and ages ago in various discussion with the people on metaphysics and ancient Pali and Greek translations, and talk about free will. And people keep asking the question. This video is really not about free will. It's really about the fundamental secrets of the universe, because Mother Nature is really simple. I mean, she really is really simple. And this explains so many things to so many people if they could just grasp this fundamental foundation of not only of existence, but what is before existence, i.e. pre-embodiment, and what's after existence. Existence is a really accurate English word, even though English is really bad for metaphysics. It means existence, means to be outside of yourself. It means to be dispersed bodily, and that's what people identify with, and that's why people fret over what they've done or what they've left undone, and they worry about actions, thinking they're the sum total of their actions, and they're not their actions at all. Actions are only about becoming and rebecoming, or in the ancient Pali, bhava nubhava, or punabhavati, or in the Greeks it would be polygenesis, different language, same premise. Talking about qualitative and quantitative nature, one of the things I've been pointing out for years, and people, it's really, really simple, and yet people don't grasp how incredibly important it is. And it's not just about magnets or magnetism, it's about the nature of who and what they are. It's about free will. It's about understanding the universe. Let's just assume that this is what is to become a magnet. It's a piece of lead, actually. But before a magnet becomes a magnet, it's quantitatively 100% identical. Its weight, its mass, nothing about it has changed in its quality, what it is. But when it becomes a magnet, now we call it a magnet. It's like, is this a magnet before it's turned into a magnet? Like, yeah, it's a lump of ferrite or neodymium iron boron, or it could be samarium cobalt, which holds a magnetic field. Say magnetic field means field coherency, or the incommensurability of the field. And it's a quality. But nothing has changed about what it is. The same could be said of two identical twins, for example. One is a sloth-mongering person that's interested in adult content on the internet, and that drinks beers and lays around or something. The other one could be a totally illuminated and transcendent person, yet they're still alive. And this, of course, is what is meant by die before ye die, or the dead man walking. It's like it's still a living, breathing human being there, but it's a dead man walking. In other words, it's an animated corpse. And, both are genetically identical. And our analogy of identical twins, one is one is headed to suffering, and the other one is headed to complete transcendence. There's no escape for suffering for those who are born, and there's no escape from death from those who are born. But a dead man walking is meant metaphysically. It means nothing dies other than the physical self. What can be liberated, and the only thing that could possibly be liberated, already has been. This is why it's a dead man walking, and the commandment to die before you die. What is potential is not actual. An acorn and an oak tree are 100% genetically identical. I assume you know what an acorn and an oak tree is. You can't get any lumber out of an acorn. The question of free will is really simple, and all of these so-called smart minds, Rene Descartes, Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, all these Western existentialist navel gazers. You know what a navel gazer is, right? someone that sits and picks at the belly button lint. You know, they waste their lives thinking about things that could have been answered really, really simply. The discussion of free will is as simple as that. And it's no different than the acorn in the oak tree. You can't get any lumber out of an acorn, even though it's genetically identical to an oak tree. What's the difference? You know, a hyper-rationalist empiricist was, they're both genetically identical. This acorn came from that oak tree, they're both genetically identical. Same genetic structure. Yeah, but you can't get any lumber out of that acorn. The quality has matured. You know, it has grown up. The nature of a magnet is quantitatively identical as to the pre-magnet. But the pre-magnet would not be called a magnet because it's not. Its atomic structure and everything like that is identical. So what's the qualitative nature that defines a magnet? Field incommensurability. Specifically, it is a point source object. We have polarization. By the way, you better listen to this. This is the distinction that people don't get. Point source regarding liberation. What does one identify with? No different than a pre-magnet, no different than an acorn. A free will, or suvi muta cetasa nabandam, the thoroughly liberated nous or chitta or spirit, means nirvana. It's no different than yoga chitta vritti nirodha or bhava nirodha nabandam, the subjugation of becoming means nirvana, for example. It's no different than saying that one has attained a point source incommensurability. This is self-actualization. This is that silly little word in English called wisdom. Wisdom just means self-proximity. Every human being, and think about this, every religion and every human being throughout ancient history to current today will acknowledge they've heard or believe that holy people or super wise people are tortured. There's all sorts of movies been made about holy people, whatever you think holy is, are tortured people. Spiritual polarization when one attains to point source. Listening? They become polarized. They become bifurcated people. A fool is exactly like this. One thing. There's no bifurcation. None whatsoever. The wiser one becomes, the more bifurcation there becomes. This is the dead man walking. Just think about that. Bifurcation. Self-actualization. Field incommensurability of a magnet versus a pre-magnet. He's a holy man, he's tortured. Is he self-tortured, or is he tortured from within, or is he tortured from without? I'll let you decide that one. The answer is actually really easy. All these people are tortured because they are spiritually polarized. In other words, there's been a bifurcation between what they are inherently and that which they are objectively, which they are not. Hence the most repeated phrase in ancient Pali, Isokaya namisata. The body is not the soul. You can't say my soul, which implies one thing has another. My soul. The body is not the soul. Isokaya namisata. Most repeated phrase in the Nikayas, over and over and over and over and over again. And it's no different than saying Rupa Nata, Veda Nata, Sankara Nata, Vinya Natati. The psychophysical is not the soul. Rupa Veda Sana Sankara Vinyana. The psychophysical, basically. Spiritual polarization. Wisdom is just a fancy word to refer to self-proximity. Polarization between that which you are and that which you are not. When a magnet is turned into a magnet, you know, from pre-magnet to actual magnet, there's polarization. You go, well, no, the magnet has a north pole and a south pole. It doesn't have that actually at all. It has field incommensurability. This is the inverse of counter space, the toroidal geometry of force and motion, the centrifugal divergence. What the magnet ultimately becomes, if we're to use a spiritual analogy where there's bifurcation now between, because a fool is not tortured at all. Fool is happy. He goes through life, you know, doing horrible things and thinking horrible thoughts. Dum-de-dum-de-dum. Fools are happy all throughout life, basically. There is no fight in them between that which they inherently are and that thing that they see in the mirror. Fools are happy. However, foolishness and ignorance, of course, always bite you in the butt. In the end, they don't care about that as long as they have a good time on the ride. Yee-haw! I'm going to have a good old time. Drink, smoke, do drugs, fornicate, whatever. And the question of free will, someone, and this sounds like a who's on first, what's on second, and I don't know on third, Abbott and Costello routine. See, people say, do I have free will? Do human beings have free will? And the question to them is, do you have free will? Well, that's the question I've got. Do I have free will? It's like, no. No. I'm asking you a question. Do you have free will? I don't know. Do I? If you're asking the very question, then you certainly don't. What is potential is not actual. There's no different in the qualitative nature of these two identical twins, for example, other than one is a dead man walking. There has been achieved a fruition of bifurcation between what is one objectively, which you are not, and that which you are inherently. This is attainment to point source. Same thing with a pre-magnet versus a magnet. You know, the magnet is quantitatively identical before and after, but what changes? Now there's bifurcation, polarization, in this thing that we call the magnet. It's bifurcated. You got a North Pole here and a South Pole there. What it inherently is, in our magnet analogy relative to a person, would be that it is now the plane of inertia, which shines like a bright star when you put it underneath magnetic viewing film. I can almost reach it over here. You see this bright star that's in the middle, in the division between objective realities, or the either half of the so-called magnet. Do you have free will? Nobody has free will unless it's actualized. Wisdom is a BS term to refer to self-proximity. People say, what self-proximity means? It sounds like you're using a word salad. I love it when people accuse me of using a word salad. It's not a word salad. What do you think self-proximity means? Well, I don't know. It sounds like a word salad to me. I love it when people accuse me of that. When they say I'm using a word salad, they're basically saying I haven't got a sharp enough brain to know what you're talking about. Self-proximity, say, well, what's the opposite of dilution? You want to know what self-proximity is? What's the opposite of dilution? You take some red dye and you squirt it into a gallon of water, and a few seconds later you see it disperse, and then poof, it vanishes. Well, it's still there. What's the opposite of dilution? That would be self-proximity. The Greeks called this epistrophe. Ancient Polynicaeans, they referred to this in the ancient Poly term, a long since dead language, died thousands of years ago. They referred to this as vimuta. And the path ver amata gamimaga. The path of immortality, or path to immortality. Immortalis amata. Human beings don't have free will until it's actualized. The question of asking if we have free will is no different than stupidly asking, can I get, if this is an acorn, how much lumber can I get out of this acorn? The answer is none. But if you plant it and take care of it for 60 to 100 years, however long it takes to get an oak tree to fruition, then you can get lumber out of it. Both are genetically identical. The pre-magnet and the magnet are genetically identical. The non-liberated and the liberated person are objectively identical. Every wise person, guru, genuine guru, not like the false gurus you see on the internet and YouTube. They're all tortured people because they are bifurcated between that which they inherently are and that which they formerly identified with. That is why metaphysics is hyper-logical. It doesn't require any leap of faith or, I believe it because someone told me to believe in it. It's none of that. It's the opposite of that. Qualitative versus quantitative, answering free will becomes extremely simple. Polarization and bifurcation between what someone is and that which they inherently are is no different than a magnet. This is the reason why a wise guru, a genuine wise guru, or a liberated person, is exactly like a magnet. A pre-magnet doesn't fascinate anybody. A lump of crud. Listen closely. But after it becomes a magnet, even though it's quantitatively identical, it's fascinating to everybody. Pretty much. Everybody's fascinated by magnets. Nobody knows what magnetism is except for yours truly. And you know that's true, even if you hate me. I'm proud to be the first person on Earth to truly, fundamentally, absolutely, from top to bottom, left to right, understand what magnetism is. You're welcome! Any donations, always warmly welcome. I ain't got no donations this month at all. It was near Christmas. I guess everybody's broke. So am I! We're all in the same boat. I'm broke too. This is the fundamental secret of Mother Nature and metaphysics. And if you understand this fundamental principle, then you will understand a whole lot of stuff in nature. A whole lot! This is one of the keys to understanding nature. You know, on a map, nobody uses regular maps. They had a little legend down here, like, these squiggly lines mean water. A teepee symbol means camping ground. Unless you knew what the legend was, you didn't understand the map, really. I don't know what all these weird little symbols are over here. But when you do, then understanding the map becomes simple. And you can't understand nature without understanding this legend. And part of the legend of life is in this video. If you think that sounds arrogant or egotistical, I don't care. I'm 100% accurate on what I said in this video, and it's incredibly important, and nobody talks about this. But if they do talk about it, it'll take them 2 volumes of a gigantic set of books, and I can stick it in a 20-minute video far easier. Metaphysics is not requiring anybody to have a leap of faith or logic. It is very simple. But people... There's very few materials out there that will tell you what something is in a nutshell. I enjoy doing things in a nutshell to explain them to people. If you like this video, you want to contact me, the information is in the description below. Merry Christmas! Happy New Year! Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, all that stuff. Whatever. You know, what is it, Festivus? A holiday of Festivus, right? Okay. Merry Christmas. Man, it is brutally cold outside, girlfriend. It was like 6 or 7 degrees below zero last night, which is like normal summer weather in Canada. Oh my God. Yeah. Good night. Merry Christmas! 'Tis the season to be jolly. La 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 la.